Igor Shesterkin should never, ever, ever be taken for granted by the Rangers or by the fans.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1435 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. So the Rangers coming off of another really solid road performance. They've been road warriors to start the season. We got an awesome performance by Igor Shesterkin. We got an interesting line change in the middle of this game, but in a roundabout way, it sort of paid off. I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a little bit here. And also, we have to wonder why Brennan Othmann is even on this team right now. But for the most part, this was an awesome night for the Rangers. Thought they really played well from the opening faceoff pretty much right to the end, and were largely in control of this game. And one of the biggest reasons why they were in control of this game is because they have Igor Shesterkin in net. Nobody should ever take this guy for granted. This is a classic case, this game tonight against Ottawa, of quality over quantity. Igor ended up making 25 saves on 27 shots. It's not the greatest performance of his career or anything like that, but this was rock solid. I thought it was one of his better performances of the season. Certainly there have been games where, he's had more on his plate. He's, had a little bit more of a wow factor, a couple of like acrobatic saves here and there, and, games where he's just been generally busier. And I understand that. But in terms of the quality and in terms of coming up with clutch saves in big spots in this game, the Senators, they didn't create like a ton of like high quality scoring chances, but anytime they did, he was there. He made the stop, and he did it in situations where the Rangers were, maybe they had just scored and you don't want to give it right back, or maybe the Rangers were only up by one goal at this point in the game, whenever it might have happened, and he made the stop in all those situations. So give you a couple examples here to begin with. The thing I love, you could tell that he was sharp very early in this game. The Rangers were up 2-0, and this is the shift after Gavrikov had just scored to make it 2-0. So that goes back to what I was just talking about, not wanting to give back a goal to the Senators after you've scored one yourself. And the Senators are able to spring Brady Tkachuk on a breakaway, and Igor denies Brady twice. They're in on the doorstep. A glove save followed by a basically diving save, and then he dives on top of the puck as well. And that was absolutely huge to not let the Senators get the momentum back. And in the second period, another really tough pad save against Tkachuk. He got him a couple of times on this night during a 2-on-1 rush for the Senators. So Igor was big time. And I think sometimes, we talk about the strong start to the game for Igor. To begin with, the Senators were out shooting the Rangers by a pretty large margin. I believe the shot totals early in this game at one point was like 9-3 or something like that. Rangers actually scored on 2 of their first 3 shots in this game, but Ottawa was getting the early scoring chances, and Igor was up to the task of basically just shutting it down. But I think it's also impressive when a goalie doesn't necessarily face like a great volume of shots. I mean, on one hand, that's awesome, and it means you're defending well, and I'm sure Igor appreciates the quality defense that was mostly played in front of him in this night, and honestly, for the entire season as well. But it's a little bit of a catch-22, because I do think as a goalie, you can't really get into a rhythm if you're not facing, really any shots. So this is kind of in the middle of those two extremes. But again, Igor was there when the Rangers needed him. That was the name of the game for Igor. There were a couple of, very quick strikes by Ottawa in this game, and he was up to the task every single time. I thought also, there's another staple of Igor Shesterkin, and this is why I will always say that Igor was worth the big contract, that it was worth it to keep him as a New York Ranger. He was clutch. He made the big saves in the big moments in this game, particularly in the third period. There was an instance where he had to make like 2 or 3 straight saves, eventually glove the puck out of the air. Jensen with the initial shot, Batherson had a couple of whacks at it, and Igor was able to snag it. There's a situation later where you've got Brady Tkachuk to Stützle. Stützle goes in all alone. Igor makes an awesome glove save, and Stützle basically barreled right into Igor Shesterkin. I wouldn't have minded the Rangers saying something to Stützle about this at the very least, but be that as it may, Igor, again, up to the task here, makes an awesome save. made a really nice glove save in the shift right after this one. And then at the very end, when the Rangers are up 3-2 before the empty netter, you had Igor making another point blank save on Tim Stützle with that about 2:40 to go in the game. So clutch all the way. Great saves by Igor, and just the variety of saves. He's making saves on the breakaway. He's making saves 2-on-1, glove saves, pad saves, saves during scrambles, saves on deflections, saves from point blank range. Maybe not. I was going to say the power play, but then again, Ottawa did score 2 power play goals in this game. In fact, those were their only 2 power play goals. But man, Igor was on his game early in this game, and he did not let up the entire way through. And honestly, even the goals that he allowed, I mean, the first one, absolute snipe off the iron and into the net, right into the top corner over Igor's left shoulder. So that had been a very difficult save. And the second one was basically just an unlucky bounce. You've got Brady Tkachuk passing across the ice to Batherson, and it basically goes off of Batherson's skate and into the net. I don't know how you keep that one out, but obviously after that, it was 2-1, but Igor held it down the rest of the way and allowed the Rangers to get this win here. And for everybody that always wants to yell 11.5 million every time the Rangers give up a goal, every time Igor gives up a goal, again, can't emphasize this enough. Igor should never be taken for granted, because as Ranger fans, we don't really know what it's like to not have elite goaltending. And it's something that I think naturally all of us, myself included, probably take it for granted at one time or another. But if we ever need a reminder as far as what it's like to not have goaltending like this, talk to a fan of one of these teams that's been trying to find their franchise goalie for literally decades. The Flyers always come to mind as an example there. But yeah, I mean, don't take this for granted. Be happy that Igor Shesterkin is on this team and that he's having a heck of a season. And the vast majority of the time is going to be a big reason why the Rangers win a game, as opposed to a big reason why the Rangers lose the game. And he was outstanding in this game here tonight. So going to keep everything going here. Gonna do a mini call out of Mike Sullivan. I mean, nothing too crazy. The Rangers won. We don't want to get negative on here or anything, but the flop that he made, the flip flop between Johnny Brodzinski and Connor Sheary, he just can't help himself. He's got to get Connor Sheary, first of all, into the lineup, and secondly, into the top 6. Just a very strange, lineup swap there, but in a roundabout way, it actually did work out. We're going to talk about all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it will be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of nearly impossible. Prices include fees up front, which is awesome. There are no last-second surprises, jumps in prices when it comes to the checkout. Alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Gametime. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. As you can see, my voice very clearly, still not 100%, but really appreciate everybody kind of sticking it out with me, through this, and obviously getting to enjoy a couple of Ranger wins recently. So for the everydayers, Rangers going to be back in action twice this weekend. Home against the Avalanche at 12:30 on Saturday, then home against Vegas on Sunday at 7. We're probably going to combine both those games into one episode that will be out either Sunday night or maybe Monday morning, but we'll keep everybody posted on that. For this game, we're going to, again, a very, very mini call out for Mike Sullivan here. The swap that he just had to make, flip-flopping Johnny Brodzinski and Connor Sheary. To begin this game, the second line was Miller, Trocheck, Brodzinski. The fourth line was Sheary, Carrick, and Radish. And like I said, he basically flip-flopped the two of them. Didn't really make any sense to me. Don't know why Sheary just has to keep getting chance after chance after chance in the top 6, but that's that all comes down to one man's decision, and that man is, of course, Mike Sullivan. But in a roundabout way, this actually paid off. Not because Sherry was moved up, mind you, but because Brodzinski was moved down. He had a big play, a big hand, and a critical goal for the Rangers in the second period. And let me just say, the second period in general, loved how the Rangers played, loved how they started that period, loved the fact that after giving up a goal late in the first period, which cut their lead down to 2-1, they took it upon themselves to really come out strong in the second period. They looked like they were fired out of a cannon, creating scoring chances left and right off the opening faceoff of the second period. That was awesome. But they did make this, just seemingly random switch of Sherry and Brodzinski, the two of them flip-flopping. But like I said, Brodzinski had a big hand in making the score 3-1. Rangers had an excellent blue-collar shift here toward the beginning of the second period, and it was a lot of the depth players. You had Morrow and Robertson out there for a lot of this. You also had the fourth line out there for a lot of this as well. And the puck briefly came out of the Ottawa zone, but only two centers were able to get off the ice for a much-needed line change for them. The other three were, still stuck on the ice. And the Rangers, they just kept going. They kept grinding away here. They kept winning puck battles. They kept the play alive in the offensive zone. And you've got Brodzinski and Radish. The two of them both went to work in the corner, both digging for the puck, both fighting for the puck. Radish basically, got it to Brodzinski. Brodzinski then sent it back to Susie. Susie, man, what a pass. This dude makes a spinning backhand pass across the ice to Will Borgen. Will Borgen fires and scores, makes it 3-1. Just was great to see these depth players coming through with a blue-collar goal here. And Brodzinski, despite being demoted in the lineup, obviously doesn't take it to heart. And he goes out there and he makes something happen for the Rangers. Critical goal at a critical moment in this game, re-establishing the 2-goal lead for the Rangers. And what I also love about this one is that the Rangers got some traffic in the front of the net at this point. During this entire shift was really just a blue-collar shift. You had some traffic in front of the net. You had guys fighting for pucks, guys digging for the puck in the corner, and depth players going out there and going to work to keep this play alive in the offensive zone. So we saw it here. We also saw the Rangers get what I would consider to be also something of a blue-collar goal a little bit earlier in this game, and it was all set up by Noah Laba. And this one came as the result of Noah Laba making a big hit in the neutral zone, knocked his guy off the puck, basically stormed the offensive zone up the right side, 2-on-4. Laba was able to spin and, basically get away from the defender, makes a pass off the boards to JT Miller. JT then goes back to Schneider at the blue line. Schneider to Gavrikov on the left side. Gavrikov moves in, fires and scores. And again, on this play, you had, this time it was Berard. He was in front of the net, screening the goalie. And by the way, 4 goals in 7 games for Gavrikov, and he has now tied his previous career high of 6 goals in a game. There are 53 games left to play. But I love these kind of greasy, blue-collar, hard-working goals. Generally speaking, I think all of us as Ranger fans have kind of been looking for this. We've kind of been clamoring for this, and maybe even occasionally borderline begging the Rangers for this. These goals that come as the result of just going to work out there. Blue-collar goals where you create some traffic in front of the net, you screen the goalie, you get a deflection, you clean up some loose change in the crease there and bury, a rebound home, something along those lines. And these 2 goals that I've just described here weren't like bona fide examples of that, but to me, they're variations of it. These were hardworking goals where the Rangers basically outworked the Senators and got some traffic in front of the net and just made things happen. And these aren't exactly the guys that you expect to score goals night in and night out. I mean, Gavrikov and Borgen. But be that as it may, again, when every single player on the ice for the Rangers is giving you an honest effort and they're going to work, and basically everybody on this team did this for the entire night, good things are going to happen. And I think this is proof positive of that. You're getting a couple of greasy blue-collar goals here. And, as far as like the greasy kind of goals, again, it's something that we all would like to see more of, but it's especially something that we like to see more of when the Rangers are going through a scoring drought, or maybe just having one of those nights where the puck just will not go in the net. And God knows we've seen quite a few games like that. So it is very refreshing when the Rangers take that approach and they take that to heart and they say, you know what, let's just go out there and outwork the opponent and let's, create some havoc in the crease. I still think there's another level the Rangers can get to when it comes to, creating chaos in front of the net and setting up shop in the crease and whatnot. But this was a step in the right direction in that department as well. And again, a couple of blue-collar goals. Ranger fans, that's music to their ears. And I'm sure, like like me, a lot of you, I'm sure, very much enjoyed seeing the Rangers score those kinds of goals in this game. So in just a minute, we're going to keep everything going. We are going to talk about a couple of different recent Ranger moves. We're kind of playing catch up here. Again, missed a couple of episodes this week due to my voice being what it is right now, but we will discuss a couple of things that we missed, kind of bring everything full circle here, including a burning question that I have. I think a lot of you have as well. Why is Brennan Othmann even on this team? Why is he up with the New York Rangers right now? We'll try to figure that out in just a second. All right, we just want to commit to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch. The holidays are amazing, but they can also get overwhelming fast. Travel, gifts, parties, year-end expenses. It's really easy to lose track of your money this time of year, and that's exactly why Monarch has been such a game changer for so many. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch, rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, simple dashboard. The holiday spending category can be a lifesaver. You can see exactly what's left in your gift and travel budget in real time. And in minutes, you can check your net worth, link all your accounts, and keep track of contributions before deadlines. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarch.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking about a couple of interesting, curious, and in some cases just strange moves made by the Rangers over the last handful of days. The beginning, where we have to begin, is with Brennan Othmann, called back up to the New York Rangers, seemingly to watch the game from the press box as a healthy scratch. And if you're kind of out on Brennan Othmann, if you don't think he really has a future with the Rangers, if you think that he shouldn't be in the lineup anyway, I mean, I can at least hear you out on that. To be very blunt, I mean, he just hasn't been that impressive when he's been in the lineup for the New York Rangers. But even if that is the case, I have a very, very reasonable question, or what I think is at least a reasonable question that I would like to ask all of you. Why call him up in the first place? It makes no sense, because I feel like some recapping is in order when it comes to Brennan Othmann. To begin with, you go back to training camp, right? He's trying to make the Rangers. He goes to the rookie camp again, the preseason and whatnot. Doesn't really look all that great in the preseason. And he ends up getting cut, fairly early in the game. There were quite a few names that were still, in theory, alive for a Ranger roster spot out of training camp. And Brennan Othmann was not one of them. So obviously he did not impress very much. And he gets cut early, heads back to the Hartford Wolfpack. Then, whenever it was, handful of games into the season, Othmann eventually gets called back up. He plays in, count them, one game for the New York Rangers. The first time he gets called up, he plays in the first game. He had a situation where he should have shot, did not, didn't get back into position on defense, cost the Rangers a goal, and then he was a healthy scratch for 3 straight games, and then he was sent back down to the Hartford Wolfpack, which pretty much brings us to now. The Rangers have called up Brennan Othmann again. I believe he's been back up for 2 games. It might be 3 at this point, but he has not seen the ice. He's been a healthy scratch for all the games since he's been called back up. And this all happening while guys like Connor Sheary and Taylor Radish are in the lineup night in and night out. So again, my question to all of you is, what is the point of calling up Brennan Othmann? I like to think that behind the scenes, and we don't know everything that happens there, but behind the scenes, whenever there's a situation like this, like the Rangers, they need to call up a forward, right? Because there's been some injuries and whatnot, and you got to call up a forward. I like to think that Drury and Sullivan are having conversations about what forward should be called up. Like if you're Chris Drury, I would hope that you don't just call up Brennan Othmann out of the blue and like Mike Sullivan finds out about it on Twitter the way that all the rest of us do. And it's just like, oh, I've got Brennan Othmann. Well, I don't want to play him anyway. I hope that's not the situation. You would think that the two of them would talk, and they do seem to have a good relationship. We know that Drury's been wanting Sullivan for a long time. But wouldn't you think that Drury would go to Sullivan and say, okay, we need a forward. I'm thinking about calling Othmann back up, but are you going to play Othmann? Like, because if you're not going to play him, Mike Sullivan, then there's really no point in us calling him up because he's a young player. In theory, he's still one of our biggest prospects, and we don't want to watch him or have him watch from the press box night in and night out every single game. And if Sullivan says that, yeah, there's a chance I'll play him in the lineup. I think there's a decent chance he'll be out there the next game. Then, okay, you call up Brennan Othmann. But if Sullivan says, like, no, I'm not going to play him, I just don't think he's there yet, I think he needs to be in Hartford, I'd rather, just call up a veteran rather than Brennan Othmann, then there's no point in calling up Brennan Othmann. Because if you ever want Othmann to right this ship, if you ever want any chance of him becoming, a somewhat productive player for the New York Rangers, ever living up to that first round billing that he got, then the way to do that is to do literally anything other than what the Rangers are doing right now. Calling him up, setting him down. One game in the lineup, bunch of healthy scratches. Call him up again, more healthy scratches. That doesn't help anybody. And I just feel like if you need a forward, I mean, so be it. You got to call up somebody. But if you're not going to put Othmann into the lineup, and I'm not even like, at this point, I'm not even clamoring and saying that like Othmann must be out there. I mean, I'd like to see him out there over either Radish or Sherry, but I just kind of know the Rangers aren't going to do that. So if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to put Othmann into the lineup, then just call up a random veteran from Hartford. Call up Anton Bleed or call up Trey Fix-Wolansky or Justin Dowling, somebody like that, somebody that's going to be here and just be the 13th forward and the healthy scratch. Because what do the Rangers lose if they call up Justin Dowling and he's the healthy scratch and sing in the press box every night? You know what I mean? Whereas if you do that with Othmann, you lose the opportunity for Othmann to continue playing in the AHL. And again, at least in theory, work his way back to the NHL, hopefully build his confidence there, continue his development, if that's still a thing. I mean, can we say that about Othmann? He was drafted like 5 years ago. Is he still continuing his development? I mean, I don't know. But to me, this just does not seem the way to go for Othmann or really anybody, especially if the Rangers are still trying to trade Othmann. Like, if we're aware of what the Rangers have done with Othmann and all the healthy scratchings and whatnot, and the yo-yo, being sent down, called up, sent down, called up, other teams are aware of that too. And there were rumors earlier this season that Drury and the Rangers would at least field calls on Brennan Othmann. Like, whatever tiny amount of leverage you ever had, it's gone now. Like, after you do all this, how are you going to demand a second round pick for Brennan Othmann when he can't even crack a lineup that has Taylor Radish and Connor Sherry and previously Juuso Parssinen in it, but there's no room for Brennan Othmann? You have zero leverage whatsoever. So that's been kind of odd. Another move that I think a lot of people were kind of scratching their heads about, earlier this week was the move to send Dylan Garand back down to the AHL and call up Spencer Martin as the backup goalie while Jonathan Quick is still working his way back. This one on the surface looks strange, but I think this one actually makes sense because for a while there, you call up Dylan Garand, there was at least a chance that Dylan Garand was going to make his first career NHL start. We had that stretch where the Rangers played 4 games in 6 days, and the last 2 of those games was a back-to-back on a Friday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon. And there was at least a chance, I think, that Garand was going to play in one of those 2 games of the back-to-back. Once that did not happen, and as Quick, continued to get closer to being back, and it does sound like he's back, pretty soon, the Rangers, I think, made a decision that it's going to be all Igor until Quick is available. Because at this point, the games are spread out enough, although there is a back-to-back coming up, so who knows? Maybe Quick will be back for one of those games. That's probably what will end up happening. But it gets to a point where it's like, okay, Garand's not going to make a start. We don't want to put this kid on ice forever, so let's send him back down to the Hartford Wolfpack. We'll call up Spencer Martin, veteran journeyman backup goalie, and that's what they've done for these last 2 games here. And Martin, for anybody wondering, for anybody that might not be familiar with him, or maybe you kind of know the name, but you don't really know his story, 30 years old, 66 career NHL games with the Avs, Canucks, Jackets, and Canes. Canes is where I know him from. He's been there the last couple of seasons. Career stats in the NHL, not great. 883 save percentage, 356 goals against average, but he did sign a 2-year deal at the league minimum with the Rangers. I believe that was back in November when that happened. So Martin's basically just there, knock on wood in case anything happens to Igor, but it does sound like Quick will be back soon, at which point I'm sure Martin will head back to the AHL. And then the one other thing that's going on right now is the injury to Adam Edstrom. He's missed each of the last 2 games. No definitive timetable that I've been able to find, but I would hope that when he's back, when he's available again, he would work back in the lineup in place of, say it with me now, either Sherry or Radish. But we know how that goes. We saw Adam Edstrom as a healthy scratch in favor of these guys not that long ago. again, I feel like you're better off with Edstrom than either one of them. At least Edstrom has some size, some good physicality, although I think Edstrom could probably play a little bit bigger than he currently plays, but he's got to be in the lineup over one of those guys when he gets back into the lineup. So we're going to call it there. As you guys can tell, my voice is just toast right now. So we're going to call it there a little bit earlier than usual. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the show, and I will see you next time.